Imagine the wildest party in human history. The champagne is flowing, the music is loud, and everyone is throwing $100 bills out the window. Now imagine the cops kick down the door, burn the house down, and lock everyone in the basement for 10 years. That is the Great Depression. We're not talking about a market correction. We're talking about an economic apocalypse. One day, America was the richest country on earth. The next, bankers were jumping out of windows and people were fighting stray dogs for scraps of bread. So how did we go from the Great Gatsby to the Grapes of Wrath in 48 hours? Simple. We got drunk on debt, gambled the rent money, and let the government drive the car off a cliff. This isn't the boring textbook version. This is the brutal story of how America partied its way into hell. Rewind to 1922. The vibe is immaculate. World War I is over and America is thriving. Factories that used to make machine guns are now pumping out toaster ovens and Model T Fords. Henry Ford turns manufacturing into a religion. Cars used to take half a day to build. Now they roll off the line every 90 minutes. Suddenly, everyone has a car. Everyone has a radio. Jazz is the internet of the 1920s. It's viral, it's loud, and old people hate it. But here's the catch. Nobody actually has any money. They have credit. This was the birth of the buy now, pay later culture. You want a washing machine? Put it on a tab. A fur coat? Finance it. The entire decade was sponsored by debt. It wasn't just gadgets either. It was real estate. Look at the Florida land boom. People were buying swampland sight unseen, hoping to flip it for a 300% profit. It was the 1920s equivalent of buying JPEGs of monkeys. While New York City looked like a jewelry store, rural America looked like a graveyard. Farmers were already broke, drowning in mortgages they couldn't pay because crop prices had tanked. But nobody looked at the farmers. They were too busy staring at the scoreboard, Wall Street. By 1928, the stock market wasn't an economy, it was a meme coin pump. Take RCA, Radio Corporation of America. It was the NVIDIA of the 1920s. In 1928 alone, the stock soared from $85 to over $500. Did they pay dividends? No. Did the math make sense? Absolutely not. But the line was going up and FOMO infected the entire nation. The secret sauce was buying on margin. Here's the math that killed America. You want to buy $100 worth of stock, but you only have $10. No problem. You pay the $10 and you borrow the other $90 from the broker. If the stock goes up to $110, you sell, pay back the loan, and keep the profit. You just doubled your money with almost zero effort. It was magic. It was free money. Let's say you want a $100 motorcycle but only have $10. You borrow $90 to buy it. Price goes up to $110, you sell, repay the loan, and double your $10. Price drops to $90, you lose it all. Drop to $80, you not only lose your $10, you now owe $10. That's margin. Small moves, total wipeouts. Your barber had stock tips. The elevator operator owned shares in General Electric. The shoe shine boy was leveraging his tips to buy copper futures. It was mass hysteria. The Dow Jones quadrupled. And the experts? They were the biggest cheerleaders. Irving Fisher, the most respected economist in America, looked at this insanity and famously said, "Stocks have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau." Spoiler alert, that's the financial equivalent of looking at the Titanic and saying, "That looks unsinkable." A few guys shouted, "Hey, maybe this is a bubble." They were laughed out of the room. Why listen to math when you can listen to the sound of the money printer? October 29th, 1929, the music stopped. Black Tuesday. The market didn't just stumble, it jumped out the window. Panic isn't strong enough word. The volume of selling was so high that the ticker tape machines, the old school way of tracking prices, literally couldn't keep up. They were running hours behind. People on the floor were trading blind, selling stocks for pennies just to get out. In a matter of hours, $14 billion evaporated. And here's why that margin loan mattered. When the stocks crashed, the brokers came for their money. "Hey, remember that $90 I loaned you? Pay me." But nobody had it. The wealth was fake. It was paper. And then the contagion hit. People ran to the banks to pull their cash out. But banks in the 1920s were basically gambling parlors with nice lobbies. They had bet your savings on the stock market. When you asked for your money, the teller had to say, "Sorry, we lost it." 9,000 banks collapsed.
Life savings? Gone. Retirement? Gone. The only thing Americans had left was panic. This is where the story gets dark. By 1932, America was unrecognizable. Unemployment hit 25%. In some cities, it was 80%. We're not talking about tight budgets. We're talking about starvation. People fainted in the streets from hunger. Mothers boiled leather shoes to make soup broth. And instead of fixing it, the government made it worse. Congress passed the Smoot-Hawley tariff to protect American jobs by taxing imports. It backfired immediately. Europe retaliated with their own taxes, and global trade dropped by 66%. We basically put the global economy in a chokehold. President Hoover tried to stay calm, telling everyone prosperity is just around the corner. The American people responded by building shanty towns out of garbage and naming them Hoovervilles. Newspapers used as blankets were Hoover blankets. Then nature decided to kick America while it was down. The Dust Bowl. The Midwest turned into a sandbox. Giant storms of black dirt miles high buried entire towns. It was biblical. If you weren't starving, you were choking. Millions fled west to California, only to find out there were no jobs there either. The low point? The bonus army. Thousands of World War I veterans marched on Washington begging for their war bonuses early so they wouldn't starve. The government's response? They sent in General MacArthur with tanks and tear gas to attack their own veterans. That was the moment the American spirit broke. 1933, enter Franklin Roosevelt. He rolls in with a cigarette holder, a smile, and a line that changed history. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. He launched the New Deal. It was basically Operation Throw Money at Everything. He created the alphabet soup. The CCC sent young men into the woods to plant trees. The WPA paid people to build bridges and paint murals. The TVA built dams to bring electricity to the hillbillies. But his genius wasn't just policy, it was PR. FDR mastered the fireside chat. He would get on the radio and talk to Americans like a neighbor, explaining banking in simple terms. He rebuilt the one thing the market had destroyed, trust. He created the FDIC, meaning if your bank failed, the government paid you back. Finally, people stopped stuffing cash in their mattresses. He created the SEC to stop Wall Street from acting like a casino. He didn't save the economy immediately. The Depression dragged on until the late 30s, but he saved the country from a revolution. So, how did the nightmare end? Ironically, it wasn't peace that saved us, it was war. When World War II started, America had to build tanks, planes, and ships. Suddenly, everyone had a job. Factories ran 24/7. The government spent so much money that the Depression was incinerated in the blast furnace of war. The lesson? The Roaring '20s proved that when you build an economy on hype and debt, eventually the bill comes due. We learned the hard way that gravity applies to stocks, banks aren't your friends, and stability is a luxury, not a guarantee. America survived, but the scars of that decade are still tattooed on the economy today. Because once you've seen the entire system collapse, you never look at a bank account the same way again.